I'm Brad Wolf, and welcome to DireDen, and this is part of our Game Master series called Mastering the Game. We are focused on the director role of the Game Master. So Riker, do you have any tips on how to share that spotlight? How do you bring somebody in who might be on the outside being shy, or how do you cut a tense scene with one character and move the camera over to the other character who's been kind of sitting out for the last few minutes? Like,
It's a great question. I think there's a grandiose way or a kind of a bird's eye view of doing this and a small intricate way that you can do this. I think simply when you're doing your games and you've noticed that some other players have taken a while in the spotlight, really all you need to do is, hey, what does your character do at this time? Right, and turn the spotlight over to them. It's like, while this is happening, may not even be finished with this scene, but like there's a lull. You take that opportunity and say, hey, what is your character doing at this time? What are they doing? And if you do that often enough, it is, a good economy where there's a good influx and outflux of different scenes or different perspectives that can help. On the grandiose scale, I always try to plan for those moments ahead of time, meaning that every game I look at I have a sheet of all my players and basically DM to-dos, like things that they've expressed to me or things that I want to introduce to them. And I think, okay, what if any of these things can I introduce this session? Is there an NPC that can I plug in? Is there a bit of information on their past that I can plug in? Is there something that they mentioned would be really cool? Like a giant shark spaceship. I don't know. We'll plug that in there, right? May not have anything to do with their story, but they said it was cool one time, so you're going to put it in, right? And so it's like those kind of things where it's purposely put into the session to give that player a spotlight. Now, it may be impossible to give every player a spotlight every game, and that's okay.
right.
But if you know that you've given one player a spotlight this game, you know that you want to focus on these players in the next one.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the idea of trying to shine that spotlight and kind of use that prep time before the game to make those notes, like, and make, because a lot of times, like, the prep advice is to know what you're done, know the rooms of your dungeon, know the monsters, or know the wilderness, like you. But after a while, I feel like as a DM, like those things kind of come second nature. Like you get used to just, I know what monsters are going to be here, and I've run all these monsters before, so
Mhm.
shifting gears once you have that experience and you got the basic game kind of mastered, shifting gears to really use that prep time to focus on the players and the goals they have, right? That's a
Yeah,
really good use of prep time. That's a great point.
I think you made the point even better. That was yeah. Couldn't have said it better.
Well, thanks. With that said, right? And because you also mentioned in there NPCs, like when's a great time to introduce a new NPC?
Mhm.
Um, do you have any tips of how to put that spotlight on an NPC and then bring it back to the player? Like, what are your tips there on getting those
Ooh.
NPCs to really interact?
I think it is again as simple as putting a spotlight on the NPC literally when you tell your player in games like, "Oh, this person is familiar to you." Like this person is you recognize this person from your past. And then depending on your players, but most of the time, like that, they're focused in at that point. They are in. They're like, oh, shoot, right? One of the many things that people might uh, know from viral videos of Critical Role during their first campaign, and I don't think this is spoilers, but maybe it's spoilers, but the moment that Matthew Mercer introduced the Briarwoods, and the moment that he said the name in the game, and the reaction that Taliesin had, one of the players, to just the name, right? He stood up. He was like, "Oh," he looked around to all the other players to see like their reaction if they knew anything or was curious about these new fellers, right? And at this point, the player was already clued in. But if not, Matthew Mercer could have later said, "Oh, these are the people that were a part of your backstory." Again, trying to avoid spoilers, but were instrumental to your growth as a character.
Briarwood's become such an important part of that campaign. Like
Huge.
that's an excellent example. Um, yeah, and I just ran a one shot. In fact, it's one we recorded.
Mhm.
It was a one shot of Lasers and Feelings, which is a cool little
Oh,
one page rules game.
great.
And one of the characters in his backstory, his father was a famous captain of a starship, and so I did something similar where an NPC shows up and she's like, I think this captain is taking over the ship and trying to steal our ship. This Captain Abraham Starfinder, which was the name of his father. And like in doing that, right, you name drop this important NPC from the character's backstory, and then you just
Mhm.
sit back and don't say anything, waiting for them to react. And
Yeah.
when they take that bait, this is a really cool moment.
Yeah, I think the method that I kinda like to use is, well, for lack of a better word, I just use braiding, where you kinda
Hmm,
take the hairs and the threads that have gone on, that the players have chosen, that they have outwardly proven to you that they are attentive to, or that they enjoy, or that are important to them, and you take those and then you tie them back in later,
that's a
right?
great point. Yeah. So if you're taking threads from different players, and then you're
Mhm,
taking threads from your NPCs, or like if you're using a pre-written adventure, right? Then you've got threads from the module itself, and now you're
mhm.
finding ways to weave all those things together.
Yeah, yeah, you are the DM is a weaver of stories, and to that point, like, as a director, you're constantly rewriting the script, that's essentially what it
Right.
is. You're constantly going back to the script and rewriting it. You may have a direction, for one session of where the campaign is going that might change incredibly in the next session, just by the things that your players say and do, right? I've had players that were like, "Oh, I wish I would've we could see that NPC again," right? So I'm like, okay, I'll take that and I'm going to weave it back in later. And it's as simple as that, where you're just
Right.
taking what is important to the players, which do change over time, and putting them back into the story to create something that they're passionate about.
Right, and I would say, kind of piggybacking on that, right?
Mhm.
The weakest link, the one that you can do away with or change the most, is the module that you're running, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at those things we just talked about, each player's backstory, the NPC story that you are now creating with the player now that they're engaged with those NPCs, right?
Hmm.
Those are their strongest threads that you keep weaving with. The
Yeah.
the the thread that comes out of the book, like the players haven't read the book,
No.
you don't need to keep that thread. None of that is canon yet because you haven't done it yet. So
Yeah.
that's the thread that you can weave in the least, right, and focus on what the players are doing and how they are telling their story, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if even if it's a villain that they really want to kill, right? Like, I hope that we see this guy again. Well, guess what? They're coming later.
Like I have a whole series of videos on campaign prep, and that's
Hmm.
one of my keys to campaign prep is 4 feuding factions, right?
Oh yeah.
So you're basically using the writing concept of four corner opposition.
Hmm.
And the idea is, as a DM, I don't pick which one of those 4 factions is going to be the final boss.
Yes.
So I put these 4 factions in play and
Hmm.
let the players interact, and eventually they're gonna find the one that they think is the worst villain out of these 4, and that's
Hmm.
the one I'm gonna build up to be the final
Yes.
boss.
Oh yes. Hands down, player created BBEGs are way better than DM created NPCs or villain BBEGs. I One of my campaigns, it was a seafaring campaign, had no BBEG, but there are pirates, so there are things that happen, right? One of the players had some Feywild manipulation, and they ran into a hag on an island. And then they ran into a power hungry captain who they narrowly escaped with one hit point and polymorphed into a fish and swam away, and they couldn't find him. But it just happened to be by this island with a hag on it that offered power, and the player said no, but that captain's going to say yes. So as they're sailing away into the distance, thinking they did great, they created something that now they've will come back to haunt them. So it's just those kind of weaving elements are so fun as a director DM, where you are almost given the story rather than creating it from scratch.
Right, and that's the fun part, and that helps you feel more like a player, right?
Yeah.
Because your players are giving you stuff, and then you're figuring out what do I do with this? In the same
Hmm.
way that the players, you're giving them the dungeon or you're giving them the villain, and they're figuring out how to respond. When you as a DM don't have a preset story,
Mhm.
you're able to play the game more because now you're responding to them while they're responding to you, and it's this beautiful, can be, sometimes it can get to be a mess, but most of
Yeah.
the time it can be this really beautiful back and forth of storytelling.
It's true. There was one time that me and my player were totally disconnected. It ended up great, but there was a moment where this player had lost their memory and were having kind of some memories come back to them about their old party members, right?
Mm,
And so in the story, I'm thinking like, "Oh, great, like, I get to put in the old stuff, the old party members that they used to travel with." But obviously, with this divinity and god elements things that I have going on, his party now would probably be more important to stay with them, right? Or so I thought. So while he encountered them, they were kind of in the midst of, like, this, let's call it a dungeon, saving some people, and he met up with these people trying to do the same thing. And while he's going around meeting all of them, he's having all these memories back, and he kind of just was like, "I want to leave with them. Like you've painted these memories coming back to him so beautifully. Not to to my own horn, but this is what they said. He's like, you've painted this memory coming back so beautifully that that's what he wants to do."
mm.
And so at the end of the session, he left with the other party and he has to make a new character the next one. So I'm like, at me, I'm like, dang it. I had so much planned. I had weaved so much in the future. But I'm like, "Ah, okay, this is the story he wants to make." We let him leave, we bring in another character, and we get to tie in new things. And it has been awesome, right? We get to play with new elements and another god that we didn't before, and it's great.
That's really neat. And sometimes, yeah, those unexpected things can throw you a curve. But again,
Mhm.
that's the fun of being the game master, and that's your opportunity to be a player in the game, right? Because now you have to adjust, and that adjustment um, is is fun. Like that adjustment is a new creative process to embrace, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.